Hello and welcome back to part 4 of my series on language learning FAQs. Again, these FAQs come from the forum which I run, the Language Learners Forum. There's about 7,000 or 8,000 members and we get a lot of questions. And so I've decided to do a series of frequently asked questions. Hopefully you'll find this useful. This week's topic is remembering vocabulary. So SRS, gold lists, number of days to use, frequency lists, and the best way to memorize words, etc. And where do I get these words from? So let's start with SRS and close. SRS stands for Spaced Repetition System. It's a scientifically proven method for learning and for memory retention while minimizing unnecessary revision. SRS is the most potent way to build your vocabulary when learning foreign languages, and it is in fact a great way to learn just about anything. With SRS, each time you revise a word and remember its meaning, the time of the next revision of that word is increased. Conversely, when you get a word wrong, the time of the next revision is decreased. And the result is that you revise words that you know less and less often, and you get words that you don't know more and more often. Now, most computer or phone applications are based on algorithms which will give you the card to revise just as you're about to forget it. Easy words, again, are pushed further and further back, but more difficult to remember words appear more frequently. And this is one of the issues people find with SRS applications like Anki, because in effect it becomes a torture machine because it's only showing you the difficult stuff. Now, what are closed deletion? Closed cards or closed deletion cards are just flashcards where you're required to type in the answer. Closed cards are especially useful if you're using a different script or an alphabet from your native language, or you just want to practice spelling. So the next one on our list is, what is the gold list method? Now, the gold list method involves writing lists of words or phrases and after an interval distilling them down and then repeating the process until you remember them. Now, the author of this method is David James, known to the polyglot community as Uncle Davy. The good news is that all you need to do to start using the gold list method is have a standard school notebook and some colored pens. In effect, this method is just another spaced repetition system, but it's done manually and with longer intervals. The method has always been a bit controversial on the forum. Some people love it, others don't. But one of the primary advantages of this method is that it is simple and cheap. You just need a notebook. So all you need to do is open the notebook so you have 2 pages available, one on the left, one on the right. The 2 pages are then divided into 2 sections, a top and a bottom. So you'll have 4 squares where you will write. So from the top of the left page, we'll call that section A. The bottom of the left page we'll call D. The top of the right page is B, and the bottom of the right page is C. So it goes left to right and then down and right to left. So in section A, you write 20 words with their translations, and then you just read the words aloud. And that's all you do on the first day. The next day, you turn the page of your notebook, you divide it into 4 quadrants as before, and you write another 20 words, new words. And you continue doing this process for 2 weeks. And every day you add 20 new words on a new page. And then after the 2 weeks, you finally move to your first distillation. So you go back to the first page where you wrote your original 20 words, and you cover the target language words, and you look at the translations, and you recall the target language words. So then you copy the ones that you forgot over into section B, which is the top of the right-hand page. Generally, you copy about 14 words because you will have remembered some. So now you're going to do, for another 2 weeks, 2 processes. As usual, you create a list of 20 new words, and then you go back to where you left off and you distill that day's distillation into the top right-hand corner. So you carry on for another 2 weeks until you add a third process while still continuing the other 2. And in the third process, you go back to the first page, the very first 20 words, where there is a distillation on the top right. You cover those words and try and recall them. And the ones that you can't recall, you distill down to quadrant C, which is the bottom right-hand page. And this is probably going to be 9 or 10 words. And now you just continue to do these 3 processes every day. Every day you add 20 new words. Every day you go back to where you need to do a first distillation, and then go back to where you need to do a second distillation. After 2 weeks of this, you add the final process, which is the distillation of the words in the bottom right-hand quadrant into the bottom left-hand quadrant. And this will be the final list of words that you just didn't remember. And this will probably be 4 or 5 words. Now at this point you can either drop them or you carry them forward into the next set of 20 words you're going to write in your notebook. And you just continue to repeat these 4 processes forever until you run out of notebook or you have to buy another one. And that's pretty much it. So now let's move on to how many words and how long before I actually know the language. Many people think that if you know a lot of words, then you know the language. But having a large passive vocabulary can help you with things like reading, but it's the active vocabulary that is most important. And the active vocabulary is vocabulary you know the meaning of, you know how to use it, you know how to say it, and it comes easily to mind when it's required. Passive vocabulary is knowledge you know when you see it or hear it. In other words, you could recognize it. So while most native speakers have a vocabulary size of about 50,000, and their active vocabulary is a lot less, generally about 5,000 constitute the active vocabulary of most native speakers without a higher education, and 10,000 words constitute the active vocabulary of a native speaker with a higher education. You'll need to recognize passively a lot of words in order to read and understand and enjoy works of literature, and you're going to need about 25,000 to 50,000 words, because you don't know what words are going to be used in the book or by the native speaker when you talk to them. So you need to anticipate a lot of words. How long is all this going to take? Well, if you needed to know 50,000 words and you're only learning 30 a day, and honestly 30 words a day is actually a lot if you're doing it every single day, 365 days. But it works out to about 4.5 years. Now, often we get questions about, should you use frequency lists? Well, the short answer is that if you're a beginner, then yes, you should. Otherwise, it is a definite maybe. But all frequency lists are not created equal. Some of them are based on words found in literature, some are based on radio or televisions, others are from magazines or even social media. So you can probably work out that you don't want to be applying for a job using only words you learned from social media. Know what I mean, cuz? But if you can find the frequency, then they are useful. And oftentimes you may need subject-specific frequency lists. So these are words that you need to learn in order to be useful in a specific subject. I have done a previous video about that, and I will put it on a card or in a link somewhere so you can find it. Now let's look at what is the best way to memorize words. Well, there's any number of different ways to memorize words. There are as many ways as there are people in the world. Everybody has their favorite way to do it. SRS, parallel text, mnemonics, you name it, everybody's got a system. But the best way is just the one that works for you. Now, there are huge arguments on our forum regularly about the best way to memorize words, but honestly, the one that lets you do it and continue to do it on a regular and consistent basis is the best one. So where do you get all of these vocabulary words from? Well, you can get them from anywhere. Initially, when you're a beginner, you'd start out with course books, Ask a Meal or Teach Yourself or some of the other books that you're going to get. As you progress, you can get them from books, novels. These are children's books. Any book that you can find and start to read. You can get them from newspapers, radio, or television. Television and films will be more difficult, simply because you need to listen to find the words. But you may get subtitles that you can extract the words from. And then there's subject-specific publication. So if you needed to learn medical terminology or driving terminology or things like that, I have done a video on how to get subject-specific vocabulary. I will add a card or try and link to that somehow. Where do you go from here? Well, to the Language Learners Forum. You can ask any question you want there, and they will be more than happy to answer. Even if the question is a frequently asked question, you will get pointed to the correct thread, or you will get various views on the subjects and different points of view from potentially thousands of people. So it's worth going, visiting, and signing up. And if you do, well, I'll see you there. So thanks again. I hope you find this series interesting. If you do, please leave a comment, like it, and share it around if you know people that might be interested in. And thank you very much for listening.